Well, hello everyone. Happy Math Crush Monday. We are talking tonight about pacing, and we're going to address it both from the teacher end and from the administrator or the math coach, the leader end, and answer some of your questions that I've run into in the last few months. So if you don't know who I am, my name is Shannon Kiebler. I'm the moderator of our Math Expressions user group on Facebook and the creator of the Math Genius Squad, a professional learning membership for all of you who teach with Math Expressions kindergarten through sixth grade. So let's get started tonight. Again, we are talking about pacing. And if you're joining me, make sure you say hello. And then any questions that you might have about pacing, let us know that too. Alrighty, so pacing. I don't know that there's actually a right answer here. I don't know that there is a one size fits all answer here, but there are some options here. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about pacing for teachers, pacing for leaders, how to use student data, and our next steps specifically for our administrators. Okay, so when we look at pacing, we have done several different workshops. We have the reteach method. You can go get that on our website, empowerlearngrow.com, where I have broken it into 7 steps on how we decide what to reteach, when to reteach, how to reteach. And that really does impact our pacing and has implications on our pacing. Because one of the reasons that we get behind is that we haven't actually paced out the year the way that we should, or it's because of our reteaching. So our kids don't get something, so we have to linger a little bit longer. And then the next thing you know, we are units behind where we should be and we don't get everything in. So my first recommendation for you tonight is to make sure that you have done a year at a glance. If you go take that reteach method, I'm going to teach you how to do that backwards design pacing. You can also head to our website, empowerlearngrow.com. You can click on back to school resources. We have some pacing suggestions there for you and how specifically to walk through that year at a glance calendar. But essentially, panic sets in when we don't have a plan and we don't know really how far or close we are from finishing everything on time or getting everything in. So it's kind of even like if you are on a weight loss journey and you refuse to step on the scale. You're kind of afraid of what the scale might tell you. So you don't want to know what it is. So then you just keep avoiding it. But if you actually just had the data and you knew how far or close you were maybe from your goal, then you could create an action step to get there. It's the same idea here, that if we don't really have an idea of where we're at and where we're supposed to be, it just keeps us in this state of fear and anxiety, and a lot of issues come from that. So we want to make sure that we have a year at a glance. What that basically means in the short version is you take your school calendar and you map out your units for the whole year. So I have a step-by-step guide on how you might do that. But when you pace out for the whole year, you have a general idea. Now, for some of you, your district does this for you. Your district's already giving you a district pacing guide, a curriculum guide, and it has like basically here's how we're fitting in your units for the whole year. Okay, you just want to know that. You want to know that it is actually on paper possible, maybe not actually possible, but on paper, here's where it should fall. When you do that year at a glance, you need to be okay with the fact that it is unlikely that you will finish the curriculum before your state testing. Now, every district is different. Every state is different. Some of you did state testing back in March. Some of you are finishing up here in April. Some of you don't even start until May. It just kind of depends on where you are in the nation. But what we do as a downfall is we rearrange things in order for us to fit in everything before state testing. So unless your state testing happens in the last month of school, friends, that's not happening, right? And if you are finishing all of your pacing before your state testing, I would argue you are probably going for breadth, not depth. And I think that we have enough evidence now to show that you can cover everything and master nothing. Or you can master some things and not cover everything. Now, that's going to have some implications when we look at student data. And I'm not saying we don't teach it. I'm saying we don't get to it before state testing. It is actually impossible to fit an entire year's worth of standards in in less than a school year, which I realize is unfair. The state testing system has not set us up for success with that. So I'm going to give you some more suggestions, but I want you to plan a year at a glance as if you have an entire school year to teach all of your standards, because you do have an entire school year. It's some choices we make about what we're going to prioritize. I want you, as you do that year at a glance, I want you to think about the end of a unit being a hard stop. Okay, so if we say we have to have unit 1 done by October 1st, it's come anything, October 1st, we are finished with that unit. So if I'm 2 weeks before October 1st, and I know I'm only halfway in, I have 3 more weeks of content, I have to start adjusting now so that no matter what, I am done October 1st. So that means now I'm going to think about where can I consolidate some lessons. Maybe I take out a particular quick quiz. Maybe I change and I limit some of the methods that I'm introducing to get to the heart of the standard. I can make adjustments. They're not ideal, but I would rather us make some of those adjustments before we get to that end of unit, so we have a hard stop, because what I'm encountering right now is what's really concerning to me. And what's concerning to me is that we have too many people who are not going to get in multiple units of instruction. That's concerning, right? So working with the school district, asking everyone, hey, well, where are you in your units? Everyone should be around unit 6. And I have some people that are like unit 2, starting unit 3, finishing up 4. And I'm like, oh no. Okay, not only is it really difficult for us to have data conversations and planning conversations, there's no way, if you're saying those types of things to me in January, that we're going to get anywhere close to finishing our year content in this school year. So we want to make adjustments during the unit and have a hard stop for every single unit. Okay, so if it's October 1st, November 15th, whatever it is. So that's mapped out, because we know if we do a hard stop, we will get in all of our content the year. If you get off of that pacing by more than 2 weeks, we need to have a conversation. Because if at all I see that we're 2 weeks off, now I'm like, okay, now we need to start making some adjustments. So you're going through your unit. I'm like, okay, I have some suggestions for you. But if you get more than 2 weeks, we start getting into major trouble zone. So my first recommendation is have a hard stop. My second recommendation is, though, at any point you get over that 2 week, I'm separated from that pacing guide by 2 weeks, now we need to reevaluate and probably do some consolidating or do some standard prioritization, something of that nature. Okay, what that means then is that we don't skip units. The units are all there for a reason. Now, some of your grade levels, especially as we get into the upper grades, there are reasons why we might rearrange a couple of the units or sections of the units in order to get more high priority testing items taught before the state test. But it doesn't mean we just omit those other parts of the unit that we may have rearranged, which happens a lot, and especially 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, they like to move their story problem unit. Often they do that. Okay, moving that story problem unit is problematic if you never get back to it. Now, my personal opinion, don't move it. I actually really like the story problem unit, not just because I like story problems, but mostly because it is a review of the entire year's content in one unit. All the operation work you did, like for 5th grade, it's all the operation work you've done with fractions, decimals, and whole numbers mixed up with different problem types. That's exactly what our state tests are. So why would you skip that? Now, some people argue it's because they feel like there's problem solving throughout the whole year in all the different units, and they don't need a concentrated unit on it. I think that's probably one of the best test prep units you can do prior to state testing. But whatever it is that you end up deciding, you just can't skip it altogether. Okay, we have to get to it. I also want to remind you that that means we want to finish strong. So some of us get to state testing, and then after state testing, we're like, well, I crammed it all in, so now we're free, kids. We have an extra hour on our hands every day. No. Okay, first of all, I know that there are things that I rushed or I didn't get to teach as thoroughly as I'd hoped. Now's the time we go back and we finish those things. Or the units that we postponed or we didn't get to, we teach strong right now. We are having a major issue with geometry. Okay, so for most of our grade levels, geometry comes at the end. For 1st grade, for 3rd grade, for 4th grade, for 5th grade, it comes later in the year. That is problematic because they're having to use all of these geometry skills in the next school year's worth of content. So like by the time they get to 5th grade, if first grade, fourth grade, third grade all barely got to it, and really they didn't get to it, it is really difficult to do the high level work that fifth grade is supposed to do when they don't know how to even decompose a shape. I'm seeing it really impact our sixth grade teachers when students are supposed to find things like the area of a hexagon, and students don't know that a hexagon can be decomposed into equilateral triangles, and I can find the area of a triangle. They don't know how to break apart shapes because they didn't actually spend quality time in those units. Those were the units, either one, they didn't get to because they got off pace, or two, they didn't teach thoroughly because they didn't think they were that important. They are that important. And so it's really impacting us in the higher levels when we skip units. So we're not skipping units, but we may do some work in the units to condense some things, to take out maybe some of the methods that aren't as important, to take out maybe some of the quick quizzes or focus on mathematical practice lessons. There's some other suggestions that we can do within the unit without just skipping an entire unit's worth of content. Okay, so for teachers, that's what we are suggesting. We're suggesting that you have that year at a glance so you at least know where you stand, you know how far off you may or may not be. We want you to raise the red flag when you get 2 weeks off. I'm not asking anybody to stay day to day on a pacing schedule from any district. That would not be good teaching. That's not responsive teaching. Okay, every class is different. It takes everyone different amount of time to get through some of that content, but we have a window of time and we want to stay within 2 weeks of that window. Okay, let's look real quickly at the pacing for our admin. So what I mean by this is that our leadership should be really aware when our teachers are not on pace. So our leaders seem to be somewhat unaware that we're missing entire units. Well, when they go to interpret the data, now they want to blame things like it must be the curriculum. It must be that we don't have intervention. Like we're posting blame on things when in reality, it's because we never actually got it taught, or we taught it so quickly we didn't teach it well, just so we could get to it for the state test, and our scores are reflecting that now. So our administrators need to be active in these conversations. I'd love just a 6-week check-in. Where's the team at in pacing? Where does this look on our pacing calendar? Not like, are you on lesson 3 on day 4? Not looking for that, but having a general idea, because our teachers can use some support and some coaching, some guidelines, guidance on what is your suggestion? Where do you think we should go next? And just having some collegial conversations around where are we at and where are we going? But having someone who can help check in helps keep a team together, because there's a lot of dysfunctional teams out there that are not on the same page at all. They're all doing their own pacing guides. It's like kind of a, not so good. Okay. So having our leadership involved is really important here. I also think if a leader can build in our professional learning communities, it helps to keep people on pace. So for example, in the Math Genius Squad, we have PLC guides. And for every unit, I outline all the different topics that are in a PLC or in a unit, and the PLC gets to decide like what topic they are most interested in. Now, if that topic aligns with the school goals, even better. Okay, if it might just be that this team decided this year when we're discussing Unit 6, we're going to really focus on volume. Okay, whatever a topic is that they really want to get better at. Well, in their PLC, they learn about the topic, they practice the math together about the topic, they watch the videos from the squad together around the topic, and then they make some collective agreements about what scaffolds are we going to use and what visuals are we going to decide on, and how are we going to know if students already know it, how are we going to decide what students don't already know it. But we choose then assessment items, and we say, okay, we all agree that if we're going to do these things to teach this concept more thoroughly and better within our time frame, and we're going to use this item on the quick quiz or the unit test as our check. So everyone, when we come back in 6 weeks or 4 weeks or whenever you come back, we're going to say, bring this piece of data, and we're going to decide, did these new teaching strategies or this focus help us achieve our goals? Well, when a school leader builds in the time for teachers to have those PLC conversations, and they choose collective agreements. We all agree on these strategies. We agree on this piece of evidence. And then they build in time for them to revisit that piece of evidence. People will stay on pace, because you have to get it done to have the data conversation. So when we have common assessments and common PLC time, then our pacing tends to fall in line. Okay, but if we're not having those conversations and we're not providing that time for teachers, we're expecting them to do it on their own, and there's just too many other things. It's just not happening. Okay, so the last thing I have for our leaders is creating then their own professional learning plan for the year. Now, if teachers are in charge of the content for their classroom and for their grade level and pacing that out, a leader is responsible for the professional learning of those teachers. So whether it's they've decided we're really doing a content push and we're going to make sure we're doing these PLCs every 6 weeks and there's an outline to follow, well, that has to be built into a professional learning calendar. So just like our teachers build a year at a glance and they build in all their units, I expect the same thing from our leaders. They build out their professional learning plan for the year. Because otherwise, we all know how it goes. We're all really on top of our game at the start of the year. And then the first month goes by, and all of a sudden we start to getting a little tired, or some, all of these red flags pop up and all of these emergencies and fires. And next thing you know, we haven't focused at all on our professional learning plan. And it's because we didn't have it built into our staff meeting protocols or agenda. We didn't have it mapped out for our professional learning days. We didn't have it in our bulletins and our newsletters, like whatever the case may be. So I want to remind us that as we're looking at this data, which we'll talk about in just a minute, we should have a professional learning plan as leaders, just like our teachers have a year at a glance curriculum guide. And we're asking everyone to let's stay committed to our plan. So how do we do that with our data? Okay, so let's take a look at our data now. When we choose to not fit in all the curriculum before the state test, that will have implications on our standardized testing. We have to know that as both teachers and leaders when we interpret that data. So maybe when our geometry and measurement scores come in and they keep coming in low in fourth grade, it's because I know I didn't get to that whole unit prior to state testing. So I'm not going to freak out about that and rush kids through it when they don't have solid understanding. But guess what? I am going to freak out at fifth grade, because if fifth grade doesn't have those scores show an increase from fourth grade, then that means actually fourth grade did not go back and teach the unit well. That's a fourth grade issue. And then fifth grade combines with that, right? So it's really fourth and fifth grade that those geometry scores in fifth grade belong to both of them, because the fourth grade geometry scores didn't really reflect the work of fourth grade. It really reflected the work of anything that may have shown up from third grade or partial of the content that was covered before state testing. So I think if our teachers and everyone understood this and really just had faith and believed in it, we would be doing more due justice to our students when we're teaching content. But we're also concerned about those scores, rightfully so, because of the pressure that's put on us, but it's because we're not actually looking at that data through the lens of our pacing guide. That also applies to organizing our data or our units for our district assessments. So what I also find is that we have MAP, NWEA, iReady, like all sorts of interim assessments, benchmark assessments from our district. And I see people not using their content correctly. They're teaching things out of order so that their students do better on those interim assessments. Friends, that is not the purpose of those assessments. That's not the goal, is to show that our kids showed even more growth on it on stuff that we haven't taught yet. That's the whole point. They're projecting, okay? So they're predictive. It's not a summative assessment. So we want to be careful of that we're using that data to tell us where students are right now, and we're not using it to tell us what we should have taught beforehand. We're saying, what did I teach, and what is this data telling me that I could have done better, or that we need to continue to touch on, or we need to do more thoroughly. But we're not reorganizing units for that. All right. Last two things, build and reteach days. So if I have my October 1st as my deadline, and the reteach method, the webinar replay we did back in January, feel free to go get it on my website. I walk you through where to build in reteach days. If you don't build in reteach days, you are in a constant state of panic, and you tend to overteach and reteach everything or nothing. You go one extreme or the other. But if I know I have a reteach day built in on Thursday this week and again next Wednesday, then I'm like, okay, I can keep moving through these lessons because I know I'm going to get to a real opportunity to stop and do some more hands-on teaching and some reteaching with my students. If you build them in, your pacing will thank you. You will just be a more confident and at ease teacher. Admin then, you would also use your data. So you are using student data, of course, as you're talking with teams and you're having instructional leadership conversations, but you're also using data to decide if your at a year glance for professional learning is working. So are we doing check-ins on that to make sure that we are giving our teachers enough support so that they can be successful in the classroom. Okay, so big thing here is let's not skip units. Let's interpret our data with the right lens on, knowing what we were taught, what we didn't, and finish strong. Just because that state test is over does not mean we're finished. We're still held accountable for those standards. For next steps, for teachers, if you go to empowerlearngrow.com, click on the back to school icon, all the year at a glance pacing suggestions, reordering suggestions, all of that, you're going to find calendars and steps there. Or on empowerlearngrow.com, go to courses, you'll find the reteach method, and I'll walk you through that whole process. But now is the time for you to be making some notes about what worked, what didn't work. You're not going to remember next year. Okay. And you're like, I really wish we would have had another couple days in this unit. Make a note now while it's fresh and make a plan for from here to the end of the year. How are you going to make sure you get in your big standards? For leadership teams, a reminder that the work you're doing and all of this work as far as building you up as an instructional leader is coming in our leadership planning workshops. This is where you as a district leader get to grab your principals and come, or you as a site leader grab your math leaders or your team leaders and you come. It's all on Zoom. And here's what we do. We identify what your math goals are. So we look at that student data and we say, where's the breakdown here? I have you look at your pacing guides. Do you even have one? Do you need to build one? We look at your school improvement plans. Okay, so we're going to look at that data together. We create a math goal. Then we talk about how we create buy-in, and then you walk away with a personalized plan. So just as much as our teachers are creating these really great plans for instruction, our leaders should be doing the exact same thing. Every year is different, and every year we need to have a focus that we stay committed to. The leadership planning workshop, for those of you who are interested, it's open right now. You can go register on our website, empowerlearngrow.com. You'll see a header right at the front. It says leadership workshop. We have several dates to choose from. It's very inexpensive because you can bring your whole team. We want you just to have a plan for the year. This will include things when we find out that our curriculum plan is failing us. Our pacing guide isn't really working. That's why we see these scores. It just helps us to know how to interpret it, and then we create a plan around it. So again, it's for your leadership team. It covers up to 8 people. It's our leaders who want to create buy-in. It's for leaders who want to use expressions without blaming. Okay, so this is for people that are like, I don't know why we have the scores we have. And a lot of us want to blame the resource when it's not actually the resource. And now it could be, okay, but it's not usually the resource. It's the implementation of the resource. It's the pacing. It's that there's a lot of other things. Okay, so we'll talk through that. And then if you want a action plan based on that student data, everything we do will be based on the data that you and your school has, and how do we move you forward from that. So again, teachers, head to the website, empowerlearngrow.com. You'll find back to school icon. You'll see some pacing there. If you want some specific pacing suggestions for your grade level, just comment. If you're on our website right now joining us, just comment in the chat. We'll send you over some specific pacing recommendations. If you are on 3rd grade, in 5th grade, in 4th grade, we have some very specific ones for you. 2nd grade, we have some specific ones for you. So as you're building out your year at a glance, I'd love for you to just take a look at our recommendations. There are some things we suggest you reorder. There are some other ways that I've given you suggestions on what to condense if you're running out of time. So if you're any of those grade levels, just comment, let me know what grade you're in, and I will send that over to you, either in email, or if you're on Facebook, comment right now and we will DM you those links as well. All right, friends, thanks so much. Happy Math Crush Monday, and we'll see you next week. Bye for now.